During the dark night of August 8, 1963, a Royal Mail train was traveling from Glasgow to London. One compartment of this train contained bags full of banknotes, which today would be worth approximately £67 million or 800 crore rupees. The train driver, Jack Mills, was speeding the engine through the darkness of the night. Suddenly, a red signal light flashed at a crossing. For the driver, this was abnormal, because at this time and place, a red signal made no sense. Anyway, driver Jack Mills immediately applied the brakes and stopped the train on the deserted track. For a moment, silence fell everywhere. But behind this silence was a master plan that was about to execute the biggest robbery of the century, the Great Train Robbery, in which the train itself was stolen. Welcome back to World Pulse Videos. Viewers, this sounds like a movie story, but in real life, robbers carried out a suspenseful plan and looted millions of pounds from a British government train, without firing a single shot. Everything started months earlier when some well-known criminals from London sat down together to execute a new feat. Bruce Reynolds, who was the mastermind of this plan,
along with some of his associates, started planning an unprecedented heist. He had secret information about Britain's National Post Service, Royal Mail. This secret information was obtained from a senior security officer of Royal Mail, whose name was unknown to anyone. The information was that the train going from Glasgow to London had a special compartment called High Value Packages, or HVP. A large sum of money was going to be transported on a specific day, and they had to loot this compartment. Bruce Reynolds and his associates were well-known criminals, but they had no experience robbing trains. Therefore, they included another gang from London in this plan, who did have experience robbing trains. This notorious gang was known as the South Coast Raiders. Slowly, the team grew, and now more than 15 people were involved in this plan. They were determined to loot the government train without firing a shot. But this was no ordinary robbery where you stop the train and loot it. This required months of planning. On August 7, 1963, at 6:50 p.m., the train departed from Glasgow Central Station for London. It was scheduled to arrive at Euston Railway Station in London the next day at 4 a.m. This train had a total of 12 compartments, and 72 post office staff members were also present to sort mails during the journey. This train was specifically run to drop parcels and posts in different cities. That's why it had to drop parcels at various stations without stopping. Whenever a station approached, the local post office staff would hang sacks on special elevated racks. When the train passed the platform, it would slow down and the staff inside would catch the sacks with the help of a net. Similarly, the mails they had to leave at that station were unloaded from their sacks while the train was still moving on the platform. Through this process, mails were distributed to various stations without stopping. The compartment where the robbery was to take place was not yet attached to this train. That compartment was safely parked at Nuneaton Valley Railway Station. This compartment was called HVP, meaning High Value Packages, because it usually contained a large amount of cash that people would money order to other cities at that time.
In 1960, 3 years before this incident, the Post Office Investigation Branch, IB, had instructed to install security alarm systems in HVP compartments to enhance their security. And in 1961, these security alarm systems were installed in 3 HVP compartments. The old compartments that didn't have security alarms were kept in reserve. But the day of the robbery was crucial. On that day, the HVP compartments with security alarms were out of service. Therefore, a reserve compartment, M3024M, was to be used, which had no security system. This was a very big tip that the robbers received from an insider at Royal Mail. When the train from Glasgow reached Nuneaton Valley Railway Station, the railway staff connected the HVP compartment to the second position after the engine. This was the first tip the robbers received, but the second tip was even more important. Normally, HVP compartments would contain around £300,000, but because the previous week was a bank holiday weekend, on the day of the robbery it contained approximately £3 million in cash, and this was tip number 2. meaning the coincidence that happened on that day perhaps happens only once in years. 12 times more money was being transported, and coincidentally, the HVP compartment with the security alarm was also out of order. But for the robbers, this was no coincidence. They had been planning for this very day for several months. Anyway, the train, including the HVP compartment, departed from Nuneaton Valley Station. It was nighttime, and the train's 58-year-old driver, Jack Mills, was rapidly taking the train towards its destination. There, the gang of robbers was also waiting in ambush in the bushes near the railway track. Their planning was absolutely perfect. On August 8, 1963, around 3 a.m., one of the group members of the robbers started tampering with the signal at Sears Crossing. He placed a glove in front of the green light to hide it and used a battery to turn on the red light, and then all of them hid and waited for the train. When the train reached Sears Crossing, the driver was quite surprised to see the red light here, because normally trains are not stopped at this crossing, especially the Royal Mail train. Anyway, Jack Mills applied the brakes and stopped the train exactly at the signal. Suddenly, silence fell everywhere. Meanwhile, the assistant driver, also called the second man, got off the train to contact the signalman using the telephone installed at the line side. When he picked up the telephone at the signal, he found that its line was cut, which was part of the robbers' plan. Just as the second man was about to turn back towards the engine, the robbers emerged from the bushes and overpowered him. Some robbers climbed onto both sides of the engine and tried to overpower the driver as well. When Jack Mills resisted, one of the robbers hit him on the head with an iron rod and he fell unconscious on the driver's seat. The robbers came with full planning. While this commotion was happening in the engine above, at the same time, some team members separated the first two compartments after the engine from the rest of the train. Their plan was to take the train away from here, but where? About 1 kilometer from Sears Crossing was Bridego Bridge, and that's where the robbers' truck was located. They had also brought a retired railway driver with them, whose job was to take the train to Bridego Bridge. Everything that happened up to this point was according to the plan, but now the robbers faced their first problem. The driver they brought with them was scared seeing the controls of this new engine because he had never operated this engine before. Out of compulsion, the robbers tried to bring Jack Mills back to consciousness and forced him to drive the train 1 kilometer away. Now the engine and two compartments started moving again and they were stopped 1 kilometer away at Bridego Bridge. Meanwhile, the staff and the remaining compartments of the train that were left behind had no idea why the train had stopped. Upon reaching Bridego Bridge, the robbers broke open the door of the HVP compartment and entered, injuring 5 staff members quite badly, and tying them face down with ropes, they began their operation. The HVP compartment had a total of 128 sacks filled with cash. These were £1, £5, and 10 shillings notes. Their total weight was about 2.5 tons. The train was on the bridge and a truck was parked on the road below. According to the robbers' plan, they had only 15 minutes, so they formed a human chain and one by one loaded 128 out of 128 sacks into the truck. The remaining 8 sacks were left due to lack of time. Their plan had worked perfectly, but in the end, only one mistake was made, which later proved most helpful in their capture. As they left, one robber told the staff tied in the HVP compartment not to try to get up for 30 minutes or their lives would be lost. The robbers had an Austin Lodestar truck on which all the cash was loaded and 2 Land Rovers on which they had put the same number, BMG 575, to mislead witnesses. After the incident, they all fled from there. About a 45-minute drive at 4:30 a.m., they reached their hideout, which was near the village of Oakley, about 43 kilometers away from the scene of the crime. During this time, they were also listening to police conversations on the VHF radio, which helped them a lot. Exactly at the moment they reached their hideout, the police also became aware of this robbery. But for now, they were very happy. They had a great time at the hideout, even playing Monopoly with real banknotes. But their happiness was short-lived. A little later, they learned through the radio that the police were searching for them within a 50-kilometer radius. The police got the idea of a 50-kilometer radius from the statement of the staff whom the robbers had told to stay put for half an hour before fleeing. So, the police had a good idea that within half an hour they would be present within a 50-kilometer radius. Hearing this, the robbers panicked.
Now their plan to leave this hideout, which was for Sunday, they shifted it for Friday. On Friday, they divided all the money among themselves. The looted amount was about £2.5 million. According to some reports, each person received £150,000, which was a huge sum at that time. That is, each person received £3.9 billion according to today's value. The remaining money they distributed to the small helpers. Before Friday, they wiped their fingerprints from everything in the hideout and assigned one person the duty to burn down the hideout after they left so that the police wouldn't find any evidence. He took the money but fled without burning down the hideout. Meanwhile, the police were searching for them throughout the Buckinghamshire area. Helicopters were hovering over the city, police cars were speeding everywhere, and national media was in an uproar. The police also announced a reward of £10,000 for anyone providing information. At this, a person living next door to the hideout came forward and informed the police that there was a lot of activity on the morning of August 8th. On suspicion, the police immediately raided the hideout. This was a leather-slayed farmhouse that the robbers had rented 3 months earlier. There, the police found a lot of evidence related to this robbery, such as empty sacks, mails, and a truck that had been hastily painted yellow. The robbers had wiped their fingerprints from here, but there were some fingerprints on that Monopoly game that they had played with real money. These fingerprints proved to be a major breakthrough in this case because all of them already had some criminal record. That's why those fingerprints matched with the records of the police and Scotland Yard, and the real culprits were identified. In just a few days, the police arrested 14 out of 16 people. Only 2 people escaped from the police. One was the replacement train driver whose real name was unknown to anyone, and the other was the senior security officer of Royal Mail, whose tip-off led to this whole plan. To this day, no one knows about that officer because he never showed his real face nor revealed his name. The court declared this robbery the biggest robbery of the century and sentenced almost all members of this gang to 30 years in prison. After this robbery, Bridego Bridge became famous as the Train Robbers Bridge, and to this day it is its new informal name. Jack Mills, the 58-year-old train driver, could never work again due to his head injury, and passed away 7 years later due to the trauma. We hope you will like and share this World Pulse channel video extensively. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next fantastic video.